Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So as usual, feel free to check out my personality themed merch. It's all about building a tribe here, getting comfortable with your own skin, and also encouraging you to wear your personality with pride. And also for more exclusive contents, feel free to check out my Patreon as well. Links are in the description box below. Also, if you want to donate coffee to the frontline workers of COVID-19 directly to them without them having to be in the line, you can feel free to do that. I will put the link in the description box as well as in the comment section. So today, the video is going to be about INFPs and the problem with weak TE. But even though I will be more focused on the INFPs because I think personally, upon observation experiences with both INFPs and ISFPs, I would say that INFPs actually have more problems with the repression of TE and also with integrating TE into their lives. So to start off, I would like to make the case of why INFPs in particular really do need more TE in their lives, and this is because they have a lot of subjectivity in their personality. Small warning here, so when NFP users start to develop their TE or when the TE function emerge during stress, I tend to realize that it comes out in an overdrive mode and they can actually believe that they have more TE than they actually do. So what I mean is that, this actually applies to anyone who are trying to use their weaker functions but are not able to fully integrate it into their personality. They tend to focus on a more superficial use of TE. So for example, what TE usually appears to people is that it's very strong in opinions. It can kind of shut down any other dissenting opinions in a second, right? Oh, I'm right, you're wrong, that kind of way. And I realized that NFPs, when they are not very familiar with the use of TE, they can kind of use TE solely for that purpose and not realizing that TE is much more than just being really headstrong in their opinions, because TE is also about recognizing what works and what doesn't and focusing on creating the best results in the most efficient and effective way. And that tends to be a part of TE that is not fully integrated in a lot of the NFP personalities. So when you look at the INFP personality, you're going to find a lot of subjective functions. Firstly, they lead with introverted feeling, which is a very subjective way of looking at the world. So when you lead with introverted feeling, all your experiences are seen almost purely from the lens of yourself and how you experienced it and how you feel about it. So an FI user, especially a leading FI user, it's really difficult for them to really see why other people are feeling the way that they do, because they are more centered on their own feelings and how they perceive other people or how they feel about other people rather than the other way around. So this at the start is already a very subjective experience. And then coupled with the fact that INFPs have introverted sensing in the tertiary function, which is also about personal experiences, about their own personal past experiences. Unlike SE, which is about the objective experience, SI is very subjective in nature. SI is less likely to look at what is actually going on around them and more likely to look at their own past experiences and using that to direct them in their life. And even though INFPs do have an objective function that is pretty strong, which is NE, but bear in mind that NE is also an intuitive function. So even with an objective intuitive function, INFPs are going to be very head in the clouds when using their NE. So they're not going to be able to come down to reality, if that is a good way to explain it, because I can't really find another better way to explain this. So INFPs, the problem is that when they don't develop their TE or when they actively repress it, because TE can seem to be even offensive to them. Like TE can seem to be counter to their like main set of beliefs and values and so on. So if INFPs hold very tightly to their first function, which is what we tend to do, every one of us, we tend to be very controlled by our first and second functions because they are the strongest of them all. But for INFPs to do that is especially harmful because they already do not have a lot of objectivity in their function stack. So a lot of their experiences, a lot of their ideas and views about the world is very subjective. And the problem with that is that the lack of balance. So with TE is way more objective. It's about the objective facts. It's about structure. It's about organization. It's about how you can actually make something happen and create results. So creating results is something that INFPs are going to have a tough time with if they only rely on their first two functions, which is what tends to happen. So firstly, I want to touch on, TE structure and how that can actually benefit the INFP's sense of turmoil. And this can also apply to the ISFPs because, leading with FI, you're going to have a lot of like this chaotic interpretations because you're not able to very easily grasp the idea of why other people are reacting the way that they do to you because your experiences and your feelings are very centered on yourself. So, for example, for an INFP or an ISFP, when they experience a certain maybe fallout with their friends, which I have mentioned before, or when they have a conflict with some person, it is very, very challenging for them to understand where the other person is coming from. And this is what I realized with like all of my INFP and ISFP friends. By the way, I do have a lot of ISFP and INFP friends, and they're very loyal and I do enjoy being around them, but they do have this issue of not being able to understand a lot of times why the other person is reacting to them the way that they do. And oftentimes they may not even recognize that they are doing certain things that are causing the reaction in other people. Because FI is, again, very focused on their own emotions and their feelings and, their own values and beliefs and so on. So with this lack of clarity, it can cause a lot of turmoil in their personal relationships. It can cause random breakups or fallouts in friendships or relationships, and they may not even know why that happened. So with TE, if INFPs and ISFPs do not repress their TE and instead try to actively let it play a conscious role in their lives, then they would be able to at least get more clarity on the situation because TE is about objective facts, it's about data, it's about structure and so on. So if they actually look at the cold hard facts about the situation, for example, what did they say, in the cause of the friendship, or what they did to the other person and how the other person responded to their behavior, then they would have a way more clear idea of why certain things happened the way they did. So they have to basically move out of the FI bubble. They have to move out of their own feelings. They have to kind of observe the situation from a very objective TE angle in order to understand actually what is going on, without involving their feelings within. Because once they involve their own feelings, then you're not going to get it. They're not going to be able to very accurately gauge why certain things came down the way they did. Because once FI is involved, it starts to have a lot of personal feelings, and you may even be upset with why the person reacted the way they did, so you don't want to find out the reason for it, if that makes sense. And so they are prone to also take a lot of things way more personally because they are not able to kind of understand the objective reality of what other people are experiencing. And so it is very easy for them to look at things in a personal way, like, or maybe this person is like really upset with me, or this person is really angry with me. But sometimes that person can be having a bad day, that person can be reacting to something else in their lives that is not like related to you. And I think for FI users, especially the dominant FI users, sometimes they are not able to kind of observe things from a like detached, just like an observer, third party point of view. And developing TE is going to be really useful in that regard. And the second point that I'm going to be building on is the difference between TE and FI in terms of the way that they go about executing plans and the way that they go about building or making ideas happen. So FI in a lot of like personalities tend to be very, very idealistic, especially when FI is also working with NE, because NE has this like multiple possibilities going on, but it's all intuitive, so it's not yet happened. It's theories, And I think with INFPs and ENFPs, that tends to be really obvious. They tend to have a lot of theoretical understanding of the world, how they want certain things to go. But TE is very different from idealism. TE is actually very practical. TE is about execution, and so the consideration of TE, I feel, is a lot more specific. So for example, instead of being like idea-oriented, TE is very, very results-oriented. So some of you may wonder, like, how come I know so much about TE? So a little bit of background here. I actually grew up in a very, very STJ-heavy society. So even though I'm an INFJ, and if you know INFJs, we are really like kind of threatened by TE. We don't really use it consciously, but I feel like I have a pretty good grasp of TE because of my environment, because I grew up with a lot of TE dominant types. My mom is an ESTJ, and I fully understand where they're coming from, even though I don't always agree with them, but I can really get to know like the usefulness of this function through them, despite my personal like maybe some clashes with this function. But that aside, TE is also really useful if you are able to utilize it in a productive and constructive way. INFPs, sometimes they have, I would even say, a simple view of the world, because it is very much in their mind, like it is very much in the theories. So they are not able to really look at, how to actually carry out the things that they want to carry out, or the kind of obstacles that are going to be in their way, or how do you go about like actually meeting these obstacles and actually like doing it in a productive and constructive way, like making sure that your plan gets carried out in a very successful and efficient manner. And TE is all about that. So TE is very, very results oriented. TE can neglect the emotional factor. So, one good analogy is that I work under a lot of TE bosses in the past, doing a lot of this hands-on waitering jobs. And they're not going to care about like how your day is, or, are you feeling tired? What they do care about is, do you get the job done? So at the end of the day, are you delivering the plates to that particular table? Are you delivering the dishes to that particular table in the correct manner? So it doesn't matter like in the middle you're like, oh, I feel this, or I feel that, or I'm exhausted, or I don't know, my pet died today. They don't care, okay, about what is going on in your like feelings world, because at the end of the day, being the boss of that restaurant, they want you to get the food delivered. Fair enough. So with the INFP, I know this sounds very like, kind of opposite of like the typical INFP's like way of thinking. But if you think about it in a way of like balancing out your functions, this actually helps INFPs a lot, because they tend to be stuck in this FI rut. So they're always like in their feelings and always kind of, feeling their way through their dreams and like through like wanting to change the world for the better. but they don't think enough about the results, like the solutions, like how do you actually go about doing the things that you want? What are your specific plans? Are they strategic? Are they actually going to work in the real world? It's all about like being in the real world and like thinking about real obstacles and the kind of people that you have to encounter, the kind of like systems that you have to encounter, and what are your actual steps that are going to take you to success, and are they the most effective? Like, are there actually better ways to do that? Able to get there faster without like wasting so much time and resources and energy just doing something that is purely for emotion's sake and not actually going to benefit the results. So outcome to a TE type is very, very important. It's the whole deal, because to them, like, it's no point for you to have your theories and all your like dreams and feelings and how you feel about this and like how you want this to be, when in reality the results are not there. Like, you are not producing the results that you want, and you may even in the process of having weak TE create worse results. So that's why I say in another video of mine, like whether NFs or NTs better the world. It's hard to say, because an NF can have all the best intentions, but if they go about it the wrong way, if they don't actually look at the world as it is, if they don't actually think about strategizing and like how to, create the best solutions, their solution can be worse than the problem. And this is what INFPs have to especially take note of. It can be in all areas of life. It can be in their career, it can be in their relationships, it can be in the way that they approach people. Like, what is actually the most effective way of communication? What is the best way for you to really achieve the result that you want? So instead of always focusing on your feelings, on like, oh, how do I feel right now? You should also start asking about results. Like, is this going to produce the result that I want? Like, what is the desired outcome in this situation? Is my action going to create the outcome that I want? So in this way, it's not just focusing on, your moodiness, which can honestly be very polarizing, right? You can be feeling sad one day and feeling happy the next. And so if you act only based on your emotions, then it's going to be creating a lot of chaos in your life. So this is what happened to some of the INFPs who are struggling. I see them, obviously some of the more extreme cases, INFPs can actually take a lot of drugs to numb their emotions. They can engage in a lot of behaviors that are actually counterproductive. They're actually going to worsen their states. Because it feels good in a moment, they kind of neglect all the rest. They kind of like forget about what is actually going to do good for them in the long term. And again, this is where TE comes in to be like a warning. The fourth points that I want to be touching on, I think a lot of the ISFPs I know, for some reason, they tend to be chronically late. And I don't know why. I don't know if this is an FI thing in general, but I do tend to realize that just people with weak TE in general, they tend to have this like really poor concept of time and not being able to be punctual and not being able to just show up when they are supposed to show up. So this can seem like a small problem, but if it is chronic, it can definitely affect your life in terms of relationships, in terms of like career, and just having the discipline to get to where you want to be. And TE can definitely be a huge help in that as well. I mean, TE is all about punctuality and, all about doing your tasks on like making sure that you do what you have to do and making sure that you get the most efficient way around doing it. And so having TE can really help, I think, INFPs and also ISFPs create more structure in their lives and depend less on their feelings and more on objectivity to navigate through life. I think everything comes down to having a balance, and if you're not very balanced, then you tend to have a lot of like patterns in your life that just keep repeating and repeating, and it's because you keep doing the same things over and over. And so I would be also talking about specifically how you can improve your TE on my Patreon. So one way really, I think the easiest way to improve your TE is to be around people who use TE. And the thing is, people who use TE as their dominant function or their creative like second function, they are likely to have a lot of different views as INFPs or even ISFPs if they are not in touch with TE, because they are going to have like maybe some contradictory worldviews or contradictory just like set of values. And I think the best way is not to let that separate you, is to not to push them away. So avoid being in a bubble of other people with the same personality, because you do need to learn from each other and really genuinely try to understand their perspective. I think that can help a lot in terms of maturity and general sense of holistic development in your life. So as usual, like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.